What up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord, Dr. Professor, Dark Joker, here with another edition of Traditional Fans with Opinions, where I'll give my reviews for whoever I watched, read, or played today. And who are Traditional Fans with Opinions? That is myself, and that is you, the viewers. With all that being said, on with the reviews. My Hero Academia Vigilantes Episode 2. So in this one, it starts off with Knuckle Duster fighting Eraserhead, and when Eraserhead tries to use his eraser quirk on Knuckle Duster, he realizes it's ineffective, which means that Knuckle Duster is quirkless. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, but in him being quirkless, I won't get into spoilers, but basically, he's just built up his own strength, and he's just very strong. And basically, the guy that You, the guy that Knuckle Duster was interrogating, Pop notices that he was at all the other sightings for the instant villains. So she and Koichi chase the guy. Then Soga's crew appears. They basically become instant villains. And, and then basically, they're restrained by Eraserhead. And the Salaryman injects the trigger drug into himself. And he becomes a giant. And basically, and then Eraserhead uses his eraser quirk on the giant, causing him to shrink. Because he's like, well, the easiest way to deal to shrink a giant is to erase the quirk. And then Eraserhead thanks Duster, but warns that them being vigilantes could cause problems. Then Koichi, he calls himself the Crawler, but everyone keeps calling him the Crawler. Then Knuckle Duster tries to stop a fight between these two middle schoolers. Doesn't go well, so Pop gets them to work things out. Basically, they're both fans of hers, so they listen they listen to her. And then there's another instant villain that appears with a hardening quirk. And then Detective Sukakuchi, who is a friend of All Might, he realizes that the guy was taken down by the vigilantes, and he wants those vigilantes investigated, setting up further stuff with this story because you know Sukakuchi will be a very important character in this series. As far as percentage wise, his role in this series is that might actually be bigger than in the original series. I'm not going to say why, but it is kind of a bigger role. And far as episode, I really liked this episode. The banter between Knuckle Duster and Razorhead was funny. And you have how everyone keeps trying getting the crawler's name incorrect. That's just funny. Also, kind of find funny how the trigger drugs were in syringes disguised as All Might dolls. I'm like, you desecrate All Might, you fiend. That alone makes you a villain. I just found it funny. And how Pop's able to get two middle schoolers stop fighting each other just because they're both attracted to her. I just found that very funny. So yeah, I think this was a good episode. You know, this arc, all the stuff regarding Trigger feature, it's gonna get very interesting. I will say that. So yeah, I think this was a good episode. Zatsu Tabi, That's Journey, episode 2. So in this one, Chika, having failed once again to get a manga published, posts another poll saying where she wants to go, where to go, and basically which direction. And well, she goes north, and she goes towards Matsushima, where she eats comes across some oysters. Then she meets this character. She meets up with this character named Koyomi, and basically they hang out for a little bit. Like basically, it's a slice of life. It's just them going around doing whatever. I like this episode. I thought it was interesting. You know, it's just showing off different locations of Japan. She's like, crap, I can't find work. I'm gonna go on a trip. Where do y'all think I should go? I mean, that's basically what we're getting. It's kind of something I would recommend doing if you're low on funds. But hey, whatever. But no, I thought it was a funny episode. I think it's a, I think this is an interesting series. It's just like trying to become a manga artist, but is having trouble with that. Now, I don't know whether or not it's her writing that's the problem, or if it's the artwork. Because apparently she's won the awards. My guess is it's for artwork. So, as far as her career, if she's trying to be an artist, and so if what's keeping her from getting a job is her writing, what she needs is to pair up herself up with a good writer. Because because for a lot of comic books where it's in manga, which regardless of country, where it's US, like Marvel, DC, a lot of independent people where it's Japan with manga, whereas Korea with manhwa, or France, whatever country. Basically, a lot of times you have an artist and a writer. You generally don't have someone do both. It happens. I mean, I think like Ichiro Oda, I think does both the artwork and the writing for One Piece. Hiro Mashima, does it for some of his stuff, and so I mean, yeah, there's people that do it, but there's also a lot of those that split up the work. Like for Batman, you had Chuck Dixon do a lot of the writing and Graham Nolan do the artwork. This was back in the 90s and 2000s. And with Rippaverse, you had with Ice On, you had Eric July do the writing, and um uh, uh I, I can't remember his name. Eh, Gabe El Taib, that's it. He did a lot. He did the artwork. Insofar as this character, as far as Chica with her career, it makes her she will find some. Now I haven't read the source material, so I don't know what all happens. But if you're in that work, if it's her writing that's screwing her up, her career options, she should find herself a writer to work with. Anyway, but as far as the episode goes, I thought this was a good episode. I think this was it's a decent showcase of the town, and looking forward to see what location she goes to next week. Moonrise. So this is the anime that Netflix released through the binge model. They released all 18 episodes at once. So in this one, basically, there's conflict between the Earth and the Moon, and the Moon's basically a colony. So Earth is ruled by the Joint Forces, which follows the commands of this AI called Sapientia, Sapientia, and basically that the AI's orders are never questioned. There are 15 billion people on Earth, and it's very difficult to provide resources for them due to like overpopulation stuff like that. So basically, there's mine expedition on the moon, and basically, and there's this group called the Shao Corporation that helps manage everything, and the heads of that company, Mona Shadow and her husband, they adopt the main character. Jacob, aka Jack, and then Sapientia also created the Seed, which are basically these artificial beings. And and that basically they inhabit the moon since humans couldn't live on the moon. And the head of those beings was a guy named Bob Skylum. And he was a robot who evolved his intelligence involved, and basically he rebelled against Earth, and well, stuff happened. Basically, Skylum became known as the Moon Devil. He built this army called the Chains, and basically Skylum raised all these humanoids. Two of the characters were Jack, the adopted, who was adopted. His DNA was like faked by so that it wasn't known for a while that he was a artificial. And so Jack and Phil, who are part of different generations. Jack's part of the first generation, Phil's part of second generation. Basically, it's revealed that when they were little, Sapientia tried to eliminate all the seeds. Jacob and Phil, they survived, and basically Jack forgot for years. And basically, there's like this attack on, you know, there's a terrorist attack, and Jack's blamed for it. And like the orbital elevator is just basically it's destroyed. No one knows who did, and Jack's parents die, and basically he is imprisoned. And basically to help prove his innocence, he basically becomes part of the VC3 force. And basically, how his gene screen was falsified and all that, it makes him a suspect. And then basically, and so the task force, VC3 is headed by Reese, who's a major and who is also Jack's childhood friend. Basically, they didn't know no one knew who was actually behind. And there's a lot, so daring their VC3's mission, they come across this girl named Mary. Basically, she's the core of this self-evolving organism called the L Zone. And basically, they're all VC3 is sent to the moon to basically fight the rebels there. And basically, the rebels were hunting for Mary. They were trying to kill her. They didn't know why. And basically, so there's like a love triangle where Mary and Reese are both into Jacob, and which kind of made Reese suspect Mary of being a spy for the Moon Chains, and it's real that Phil is part of the Moon Chains. And so he and Jack have some conflict, and then basically the L Zone starts evolving more and starts trying to consume the Moon colony. And you know, basically there's like a lot of stuff that goes down. And then basically Jacob runs off with Mary, and basically for a year, like they're on the run. They basically help somewhat join the Moon Rebels. Don't and there's conflict between, and there's a lot of weird stuff that happens. So basically it's revealed Phil had been impersonating Bob Skylum and basically had been leading the rebel movement. So basically Jacob and Phil form an alliance, and then there's a lot. The story is very confusing, and then basically there there's a final fight against the L Zone. They're out like Jacob's able to save Mary and they're able to defeat the L Zone. Then Phil turns himself into the Joint Forces. And it's revealed that Sapientia was behind the attack. And basically it's revealed that because to deal with overpopulation issues, the way to deal with it was to start a war between the moon and Earth. That was the AI's conclusion. And there's a weird thing. So basically, Phil's taken into custody, and he like comes across Sapientia, and he basically like blows himself and the AI up, along with some of the leaders in the joint forces. And it's assumed that Phil died. Now, then we see, then Jack, takes over the railroad on the moon, and he basically says that the moon has no king, the people are in charge. So like, there's no AI, no king ruling things. It's all in charge. And basically, there's a lot of weird stuff where at Phil's grave, Jack gets a message on some app from Phil. So it's possible Phil's still alive, and that's basically how it ends. And then, so we don't know if there's gonna be a second season, given the fact that this didn't have a lot of press. This didn't have a lot going for not a lot of marketing. This was released through the binge mall, so which the I was gonna say the binge mall's retarded. Yes, you have people like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, who I highly respect, say that the binge model is good for consumers. I disagree. Yes, it's better for businesses. I don't care about the production companies. I don't care. Well, they make good stuff. I don't care about the companies, but from a consumer standpoint, I think weekly is better because it's easier to make time for. Like, if you just have one episode a week, it's easier to make time for it, especially if you're watching a bunch of stuff, which for anime fans, that's a lot of stuff. Hollywood, you may have one or two shows because there's very rarely a multiple big time shows people are watching for Hollywood stuff. For anime, there's a lot. So if your consumer is just easier to make time for, and if you're reviewing stuff, the binge model's better because then you have content going on each week. It's not like, not everything's going to be like, with the live action One Piece, where due to the manga and anime's popularity, the live action was able to stay into the zeitgeist a little longer. And, same thing with with the Acolyte. Well, Acolyte was weekly, where that's staying to the zeitgeist longer because, well, the mainstream media kept into the zeitgeist by, well, acting like the mainstream media. But no, weekly model's better. They should have released this weekly. I don't know how well it would have done, but I think it would have done better. I think it would receive more hype. I think there'd be a lot more people reviewing it, and like weekly is better. Like objectively, it's better. And as far as the quality of the show, I mean, it's very convoluted. The premise, the premise is very interesting. The graphics are great. The music is phenomenal. I really like the opening theme and ending themes. But the story is kind of boring. It's not executed very well. It's okay. It's an okay show. I would have liked to see more of it. Like you can do a space opera show. Like I think if this had done better with the character writing, I think this would have been a sleeper hit. But that's not what we got. This is like I would say this is on a 0 to 100 scale. I would say this is a 60%. The Amateur. So this is a 2025 remake of a 1981 Canadian movie, which was based off a novel released around the same time. And as far as comparing the 1981 movie to this movie goes, this movie is very loosely adapts the 1981 movie. Now haven't read the novel, so I don't know, and couldn't find too much about the plot points in the novel, so I don't know how accurate of a adaptation this movie is compared to that. But given its current day, given the fact that the author of the novel was involved with the 1981 movie, I think that the 81 movie was most likely more faithful. And so anyway, so as far as this movie goes, basically you have a CIA cryptographer, Charlie Heller, whose wife Sarah is killed by terrorists during a business trip in London. And Charlie learns from this source named Inqueline that the Special Activities Center director, Alex Moore, who is also the deputy director of CIA, basically did a lot of politically motivated drone strikes that were disguised as suicide bombers. Basically, it was a false flag operation to like fulfill his own ambitions. And basically, it's what it's well. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into, but basically, like Moore and his subordinate, Caleb, are basically running all these illegal operations, and so Charlie blackmails them into giving him some training so he can kill the guys who kill his wife. So Charlie's trained by Colonel Robert Henderson at Camp Perry, which is the basically that's the CIA training facility. And basically, while Moore and Caleb try to find where or not what evidence he has, see if there is like a dead switch or something that would basically it's revealed to be a bluff. But Charlie, who had bugged, their office, like Moore's office, basically he's able to escape before Henderson can kill him. And Charlie tracks the first terrorist, Gretchen Frank, in Paris, and he traps her inside this, hypobaric hypobaric chamber. She fills with pollen, which Gretchen's allergic to. Charlie tries to figure out the location of Schiller, who is the ringleader of the terrorist group and was the one who basically put a bullet in Sarah. But with Henderson had told Charlie that he's not a killer. Charlie's not willing to kill Gretchen, so he lets her go, but she then gets hit by a car and dies. Yeah. So Charlie then escapes and goes to Istanbul with the help of Equaline, where he meets Equaline face to face, revealed to be a widow of a ex KGB officer who had taken that officer's place as Equaline. Izzy, they track the next terrorist, um, Mishka Blazic to Madrid, and basically Charlie uses this scuba equipment to decompress the air, which shatters the glass of Blazic's pool, which causes Blazic to fall to his death. And Charlie's almost caught by Henderson, but CIA Director O'Brien had sent an operative to go after Charlie and Henderson, having become suspicious of Moore. And basically, Henderson fights the other operative and is shot by the operative, but Henderson's able to kill the guy. And Henderson basically, while he's sitting there wounded, Charlie just runs off. But his strike team gets to Istanbul and kills Incoline, and Charlie's able to escape. And Charlie tracks the next guy, Ellis to Romania. Basically, he traps him with this explosive made by a makeshift bomb that which during his training, the only thing Charlie was good at was making bombs. He couldn't shoot worth a crap. Like he probably makes stormtroopers look like good shots. But basically, he gets Ellis to tell him that Schiller operates from a ship near in Russia near the Baltic. So he takes Ellis's phone and then he leaves Ellis to die with in the explosion. And Charlie gets him Primorsk to spy on Schiller. Then he's caught and brought aboard Schiller's ship. And then basically Schiller taunts him, gives him a load gun, basically tells him, kill him, take his revenge. But true that Charlie had hacked the ship to land in the Gulf of Finland, and then Interpol and the Finnish police arrest Schiller. Then Moore and Caleb are arrested for their crimes, and Charlie goes back to work and finishes his plane that he was working on before his wife died. And Harrison, who revealed to have survived his injuries, thanks, you know, Charlie, and I guess basically for dealing with Moore and Caleb. So yeah, that's the movie. It was kind of boring. I would say it was mid. It was okay. Like, Lawrence Fishburne's a good actor. Like, which that should go without saying. He's a good actor. He probably puts on the best performance. Remy Malek's okay. I this was. I don't think this is a movie that's going to be remembered very much. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just okay. Not worth writing home about. So yeah, can't really recommend it because it's not good, but can't say it's absolute crap because it's not a bad movie. It's just okay. Watson episode 9. So this one, it takes place on Valentine's Day. So you have one doctor trying to form a Dane profile. You have Watson and Mary dealing with their stuff. And so as far as the medical case this week, so basically you have Dr. Ingrid Dirian, who's never who's not been trustworthy. She's shown to be very manipulative, much alive, very much an opportunist. So her sister Gigi gets this life-threatening condition, and she's like involved with this spinal program that basically Ingrid lies about being her sister in order so Gigi could get in because there would have been a conflict of interest that would have kept Gigi out. Basically, it's revealed that how Gigi got paralyzed was basically her and Ingrid's father was abusive and caused Gigi to fall through a railing, which paralyzed her. And as far as there's a few flashbacks scattered throughout this episode showing like what happened at the hospital, where it's revealed that whoever was the head of the hospital like did not want to perform a surgery to fix the spine because didn't want there if something goes wrong there would be a risk of being sued for malpractice. And then so Ingrid, who was going by Dee Dee at the time, is recommended you know that Mary perform the surgery. And I believe this was like before her and John dated, like Mary and John Watson dated. So basically, Mary's basically what Dee Dee the time that was good was to remove Gigi's spleen and then operate on the spine, since people can live without a spleen. So Mary was about to do it, but the doctor basically said no because basically if the surgery was successful, he would have been proven wrong and his ego was getting in the way. He was like, no, this is too unsafe, and basically he threatened to fire Mary and tell every hospital around to not hire her. And so Mary, having to look out for her own career, decided not to do the surgery. And Dee Dee, very pissed off about that. And to prevent her father being abused again, steals fentanyl, had stolen fentanyl from the hospital and ejected her father with it, which kills him. So basically, Ingrid's a murderer. Now, doesn't excuse her father for what he did. That guy should have been put in prison for at least for abusing his kids. But Ingrid's still a murderer. There's no excuse for that. And so it's revealed that the reason she basically has done all this shady stuff she's done, like framing someone for DUI, um, like basically she's not a nice person. She's done some things she and she lied to get Gigi into a that spinal treatment program she was involved with. Basically, all her medical career has been focusing on helping Gigi walk again. And it's revealed that the condition that Gigi's suffering was caused by some medical procedure that Ingrid was doing to help her. And basically, they're able to help her, and then basically, Mary agrees to not remove Gigi from the spinal program, but she tells Ingrid that she has 2 months to find another job or she's gone. Basically says you can stay for 2 months and search for a job, but if you're not gone by 2 months, you're fired. And that's basically what is. Ingrid tells that to Watson. Watson's like, yeah, that's what you get. And, and I agree with Watson and Mary on this. Yeah, I can't I couldn't trust Ingrid. No, I wouldn't trust her. I mean, Watson has his own issues with the headaches, all the stuff with whatever his brain injury. But and he did kind of break the rules with one patient, but he didn't straight up murder someone like Ingrid or frame someone for DUI or do a bunch of or break a lot of conflict of interest stuff. And but yeah, Ingrid, she's probably pissed off. Moriarty, who had already approached her, will probably try to take advantage of that, especially with this season. I believe it's coming to an end soon. As far as the episode goes, I don't like this episode. Like the hospital stuff does not have intrigue. So compared to let's say like a Meku MD Doctor Detective, which also does a whole you know doctors acting like detectives, like that show does it so much better than this. Like it actually puts emphasis on the medical stuff and the investigation stuff, whereas this show does not. It's just some melodrama. I can't call it CW because it doesn't have the problems that a lot of CW shows have. But well, okay, it doesn't have all the problems CW has. But this episode is this show is just not good. Like I don't know why it was made. There's no need to have it associated with Sherlock Holmes. And I don't think it was good. I have no. I mean, yes, Ingrid went through some bad stuff. That has never excused her actions. Like, the problem is, it seems like this show, the way the story is portrayed, is trying to excuse her actions, which is not what it should be doing. Should be portraying like, okay, yes, this was what she did, this was her reasons. But the way this is portrayed, it's like it's telling us to excuse her actions, which I won't. I'm like, I don't care if a show's telling me to excuse someone's actions. I'm not going to excuse it. No, she murdered the guy. And yeah, he was an abusive prick and should have been in prison at minimum. But she still shouldn't have stabbed him with fentanyl and basically forced him to OD. No, she should have never framed the guy for DUI to get grant money. Like, and we knew that she was not trustworthy. We all knew that, and she's finally paying some consequence. Hopefully, he's finally paying some consequences for it. So yeah, I have no sympathy. I mean, I don't care about the side characters. I'm like, if you're trying to associate with Sherlock Holmes, let's have some Sherlock. Like, just I want a Sherlock Holmes story to just be basic. Sherlock Holmes and John Watson investigating crimes. Yes, you can use Watson's skills as a doctor. Of course, that should be used. He's a doctor. Of course, his skills should be used. But the premise of this show is just retarded. You have a Sherlock Holmes show without Sherlock Holmes. And that's not going to work. I mean, it just doesn't work. And it's not even set in the UK. So yeah, this was not a good episode. I cannot recommend watching this. And that's it. Did y'all like the stuff I reviewed? And if you have your own opinions about all that, you can put all that in the comments. Thank you for watching, and like, subscribe, and all that. And look forward to the next video.